Hi, my name is Stan Rockwell. I've been a counselor for, over 40 years now and recently retired from that. I've been studying Taijiquan and Qigong for over 20 years. And I initially got interested because of studying Chinese philosophy, and one of the other things I do is teach on a class on classical Chinese philosophy. And Taiji and Qigong have a basis in Chinese medicine, Chinese philosophy, particularly Taoist philosophy, if you've ever read the Tao Te Ching. In the handout you get, there a listing of resources at the end. Be sure to take a look at those. Be sure to read the handout too, because it'll give you a lot more detail than we can do here. Because what I want to emphasize here is the actual physical movement, because you learn something, I think, by experiencing it. So that's what we want to do. A couple things to go over briefly. First, it is a physical exercise, so make sure you are capable of doing it. So don't do anything that's going to put you out of your comfort zone. In Taiji, there's actually a 70% rule where you only do 70% of whatever you're capable of at this moment. There's no 110%. That's not really possible. If you ever in the old days tried to increase the memory on your computer by overclocking the motherboard, what you discovered was you had a fast computer for a while, but you burned out the motherboard. Similar thing with physical activity. When you push yourself, you get injured. And a major emphasis of this is health and getting healthy. A principal part of Chinese philosophy is harmony and balance. So it's getting yourself in harmony and in balance with nature. It's all based in nature. So, a couple other concepts, yin-yang. I'm guessing probably most people are familiar with that. The yin-yang symbol, it looks like the two fish. Within the white side, there's the black spot. Within the black side, there's a white spot. There's always yin within yang, and they're all always going from one to the other. None is ever fully yang or fully yin. Wu Ji is another concept where it's similar to flow state in Western psychology. In Chinese philosophy, it's really kind of a way of being. It's not pushing. It sometimes translates as trying not to try or effortless effort, which is a paradox, but there's a lot of paradoxes in Chinese philosophy. So let's begin. First thing we want to do is get ourselves grounded. And you can ground to the yin energy of the earth and the yang energy of the heavens. We want to have ourselves balanced. So you have your feet about shoulder width apart, as parallel as you can get them. The medicine part of this is they want qi or energy to flow in your body as efficiently as possible. They see illness and injury is a factor of too much qi, too little qi, or qi being blocked. It doesn't matter if you believe that or not. But when you do these, you do get your body more in balance. If you have issues with knees, hips, ankles, shoulders, elbows, again, stay in your comfort zone. I've worked with folks who couldn't have their feet parallel. They had to have their toes outwards a little bit. And if that's true for you, that's okay. One quick way to get your feet shoulder width is put your heel at your instep, rotate on the forefoot, and bring your foot up so that they're even. And I want to tell you there are two versions of shoulder width with your feet. Outsides of the feet line up with the outsides of the shoulders. Insides of the feet line up with the outside of the shoulders. It's a little bit further apart. We'll be using both of those, but for right now it's outsides of the feet, outsides of the shoulder. And just start to feel how the bottoms of your feet feel connected to the floor or to the earth. We're doing this outside because it's a nice day here and doing this at the end of January. If you're doing it inside, you can do it barefoot on carpet. If you're on a flat surface like this, I tend to wear flat shoes that are minimalist shoes. You don't want to wear shoes with soles that are too thick, or you really don't want to wear high heels. Something that gives you a firm foundation. Pay attention if you're evenly balanced left and right, front, back, and start to sink down into the middle. Oftentimes I'll ask folks before they start just to, wherever you are at the moment, check out your posture. After about the age 6, our posture starts to go downhill and our breathing starts to change too. We'll talk about that in a moment. What we're trying to do is get ourselves in harmony with gravity, so we're doing the least amount of work possible to stay up, and that's another principle of Tai Chi. You only use the muscles, tendons, joints, ligaments that you need for whatever it is you're doing at that moment. The rest of you is relaxed but ready. If you practice yoga, if you think of Shavasana when you're like laying on the floor totally relaxed, that's not what we're doing because we wouldn't be able to stand up. That's too yin. But if you're stressed out and hyper tensed up, that's too young. We want to be in the middle. My visualization is a crane standing in the water waiting for the fish to come by. When the fish comes by, the crane is paying good attention, grabs it, comes back, and is immediately back in a relaxed but ready position. Pay attention to the bottoms of your feet. If you're like me and your feet are flat and it tends to bow your knees in, you raise your arches up till your knees are pointed in the same direction as your toes. And everything we do, your knees and toes are going to be pointed in the same direction. And there are a couple of times when we'll be in something called an archer stance or bow and arrow stance. When we do that, the back foot's going to be at 45 degrees, the front foot's going to be at 90 degrees. There's going to be some space in between, a couple of fists worth. But whenever you step forward with a foot, you still want to make sure your knees and toes are pointing in the same direction. And your knee is always going to be behind your toe. So if I were to drop a line from this toe, it would hit somewhere behind, from this knee, sorry, it would drop somewhere behind the toes. There's a lot of visualizations through this. So you can visualize an energetic connection. There's an acupressure point in the center of the forefoot, the K1, first point of the kidney meridian, called the Yongchen. It translates as bubbling well. You can visualize an energetic connection to the earth. The most stable connection is a 3-point stance. If you think of the old milking stools where no matter what surface they were on, they wouldn't rock, like a 4-legged chair. So you can visualize roots growing out of your feet, and that's another visualization, especially in Yang family Tai Chi, where you visualize rooting into the earth. And the points in your foot, each foot, the ball of the foot at the base of the big toe, the ball of the foot at the base of the little toe, and the center of the heel. So you get a really sturdy connection as you start to relax down into it. It'd be hard to get you off your feet. So once we're fully grounded into the earth, we want to ground ourselves to the heavens. Have another acupressure point. It's pretty much the same thing as the crown chakra in yoga. It's called the Ba Wei in Chinese. You can visualize an energetic connection pulling you up, a line attached there pulling you up, stretching you upwards towards the heavens, making you taller, stacking your vertebrae on top of each other. And as it does that, it starts to make some adjustments to your body. Tops of your hips are parallel to the floor. Your tailbone drops down a little bit. Your hips move back a little bit. It tends to flatten out your stomach and your lower back. Starts to give your spine more of a J shape instead of that S shape like we have normally. There's a culture in India where folks, because of the way they move their hips when they walk, their spine is in that J shape all the time, and they don't have back issues. Tops of your shoulders are parallel to the floor, and they relax down a center line like your shoulder blades are flowing down your back. So your shoulders aren't up around your ears like you're really stressed. They're not slouched forward like you're feeling sad. They're not pulled back like you're standing at attention either. That's more of a rigid posture. And in Tai Chi and Tao Te Ching, Chinese philosophy, softness overcomes hardness, rigidity overcomes flexibility overcomes rigidity. And that's true through all of this. An imaginary line across your eyes and ears is parallel to the floor, so that your head is not tilted to one side or the other, or forward or back. As we get older, a lot of times we start to tilt forward. We want to have it so if we were to drop a line from that Ba Wei spot right straight down through the center of our bodies, through the perineum, it would hit the floor, probably equally distant from the ankles or from those bubbling wells. We visualize an invisible line around the outsides of our feet, and everything inside that triangle is our foundation that we're built on, and we want that foundation to be very solid, and we want to be centered over it. So When I'm centered like this, if that line comes straight down and hits the middle of that foundation, if I'm standing like this, it still hits somewhere within the line around the outsides of the foot, so I'm never tilted, never leaning outside of that. Back of the head rises up, your chin tucks in a little bit. Sometimes it's called raising the shin or the spirit up from the earth. Move your head back just a little bit. You drop a line from your ears, earlobes, goes through your shoulders, your hips, your ankles, and there's a little bit of a bend in your knees. And there's always going to be some bend in your knees and your elbows. Never fully extend the joint, never fully lock the joint. There's a Chinese martial art called Chin Na, which is joint locking, where you control people, hurt people. We don't want to do that, but they do it by locking joints or by fully compressing joints. When you fully extend or compress, again, you can injure yourself. You can hyperextend a joint. So softness. Softness is kind of a key word in all of this. So once you're in harmony with gravity and balanced, you focus on your breathing. And we mentioned earlier that oftentimes, especially starting about 6 years old, first grade area, our breathing starts to move from down here more up here. So another experiment you can do is put one hand here, and in Chinese this would be your middle dantian, this would be your lower dantian, third eye would be upper dantian. Translates basically as elixir fields or energy centers, similar to chakras in yoga, but to me in Chinese they really kind of are synonymous with energy fields in your body, the electromagnetic field around your brain, around your heart, and around the enteric nervous system, which is an amazing nervous system. So have your hands here, just breathe like you would normally breathe and see which hand moves. If this hand is moving, that's a stress response breath. If this hand is moving, the lower hand, that's a relaxation response moving. When we breathe like our bodies are meant to breathe, we pull the diaphragm down and it pulls air down into the lungs, and that's very efficient. When we breathe from up here, we're having to use muscles that really don't do that very well. You have to breathe more rapidly. You have to breathe with more work. And it automatically increases your blood pressure, increases your stress response. You can almost induce a stress response or panic attack by breathing really quickly from up here. So what we want to do is breathe from down here. So when I inhale, this hand down here is at the lower dantian is going to expand, and then it's going to come back when I exhale. Other thing too for breathing is make the exhale last just a little bit longer than the inhale. That induces the relaxation response. There are times when working with folks with anxiety, and police departments do this, military does this, your major intervention is just breath work. And you focus on slowing that breathing down and making it come from down here. When you breathe from down here, you not only lower your blood pressure and lower your breathing rate, your heart rate, you lower your blood sugar, you even change the size of your pupils. The blood goes from out in your arms and legs for that fight or flight back into your insides for rest and digest. I want you, as best you can, and if there are allergies or colds or things, sometimes it's hard to breathe through your nose, but if you can, breathe in through your nose, down to your diaphragm, and make it an inhale all the way around. 70% rule applies for this too, though. You don't inhale as deeply as you can. I know in some classes it sounds like folks are trying to inhale the entire room. Don't do that either. It also can bring on a stress response. We're going for relaxation response, so just breathe. And breathe at your own pace. There have been times in classes when I would count the breaths and I would tend to breathe really slowly, but if folks had asthma, that didn't work very well. Again, you stay within your own parameters. What's best for you? But again, make the exhale last a little bit longer than the inhale. As you breathe, we're going to do kind of a body scan. We're going to start at the top and work our way down. And when you're doing this on your own, you can do it bottom up, top down, whatever works for you. But if you feel any tightness across the top of your head, around your forehead, your eyes, your ears, your jaw, your mouth, just breathe into it and let it soften. Big part of regulating emotions is your facial muscles. If you study polyvagal theory, one of the ways we sort of co-regulate each other is our facial expressions, and we don't even really notice it. But one way, again, to kind of calm yourself down is to relax all the muscles in your face. One other part of the breathing, too, I didn't mention, but I want to, is putting the tip of the tongue to the roof of the mouth behind your front teeth. Now, I first learned that back 30-some years ago with TMJ. When you press your tongue there just right, you can't clench your jaw, which gave me great relief in reducing pain in the jaw. But in Chinese medicine, they see you as having a couple of 12 major meridians of energy. But there's a major one that runs from the tip of the tongue down the front of the body, the conception vessel, to the perineum. And the governing vessel runs from the perineum up the back of the body, around the top of the head, into the roof of the mouth. So they say when you touch the tongue to the roof of your mouth, you're connecting those two energy channels. And again, it doesn't matter if you believe that, but when you touch your tongue there just right, you can't clench your jaw. And there are some Qigong exercises where you visualize the energy moving in that channel, the microcosmic orbit. Continue breathing if you feel any tension or tightness in your neck, down your shoulders, into your arms, your wrists, your hands, your fingers. Just breathe into it and let it soften. Your chest, your stomach, your back, down your hips, your buttocks, and to your thighs, hamstrings. Any tightness anywhere, just let it soften and let it relax. Your knees, down your shins and calves and your ankles, your feet, your toes. If you feel any tightness anywhere, just let it soften and let it relax. One part of Taijiquan practice is standing meditation and Qigong practice. You can use this sequence of breath work, getting your foundation set. And actually you can do this standing or sitting. If you're sitting, you just make sure that, again, your posture is such that you're not leaning one way or the other. One thing you might want to check sometime too is get somebody to look and see if you're standing like this, if your body is straight up, if you're leaning back or leaning forward. Because one thing I've discovered in working with classes is oftentimes folks don't exactly know where they are in space. And especially as we get older and we don't move around as much, when we're first born, we have to learn to walk. So we have to get those connections between our muscles and our brain. And if we don't use those, they tend to go away. So we're going to do a warm-up that was developed by a physician in Australia named Paul Lam, who grew up in China during the Great Famine in the 50s, early 60s, and the Great Leap Forward part, and made it out to Australia. And because of health issues associated with the famine and starvation, he married into a family where his father-in-law was a Taijiquan master, and he began to learn these practices. And he's, I think, around 70 years old now and still practicing and still teaching. And he's one of the resources on the website. But he developed this as a hopefully easy to remember way of starting at the top and working your way down and just loosening up everything. So just let your shoulders relax, get yourself balanced, and you let your arms float up like you have strings on your wrist, palms are facing, right shoulder high. You turn your hands towards your face as you press in, you drop the elbows, and it's like you're pressing your head back just a bit. So you feel some movement in your neck, you turn your hands and press out, and your arms extend outwards. There's a principle called song, and it's the expansion contraction of the joints. So you just visualize the joints expanding outwards, but again, you don't lock them. As your hands come down, you tuck your chin just a bit. It's an inhale and an exhale and an inhale and an exhale. One more. And hands come back down. Come back to the center. Do a second for the neck. Your arms come up again with your palms facing. Drop one hand down so the palms facing towards the floor. You have some bend in your wrist. There are major acupressure points in your wrist. There's an acupressure point where your fingers touch your palm called the Lao Gong point. Remember the upper dantian we talked about before? We want to line those two up. Have your shoulder nice and relaxed. You're just going to turn the head and the arm to that side. Come back to the center. Lower hand comes up, palms face briefly. They trade places. You exhale off to the side. Inhale to the center. Just continue. 2 more on each side. Arms come back down. When we make the movements, try to make them like you're moving through a gentle resistance, like you're moving through water. So they're slow, but they're controlled. If you're learning anything physical, what you want to do is have kind of a mindful practice or a focused practice. You just don't, go through the motions. You pay attention to how you're doing things. And that's, in studies, one of the differences between elite athletes and just everyday folks is the quality of the practice. So, we move on to the shoulders. And the first one is just shoulder rolls. And if you have issues with rotator cuffs like many of us do, again, you adapt it so you can rotate your arms so your palms are facing behind you and you make the circles with your elbows. I'm just going to roll the shoulders forward and you synchronize the breathing however you want. And then just going to reverse. Come back to the center. The next one is sometimes called sinking your chi. Again, he uses it for the shoulders, but it's a movement that's used oftentimes at the end of a practice to balance energy out. Your arms float up. Again, it's one you can use visualizations. Remember those Lao Gong points? You can visualize clean yin energy from the earth coming into your palms. As you turn them upwards, clean yang energy from the heavens coming in and then pressing that clean energy down through your body and expelling stagnant energy out through your feet. It's an inhale up and an exhale down. We'll just keep going for a little bit. I first learned about visualization probably from a medical standpoint in the 70s when my father was in the hospital with cancer. And even at that time, folks were using visualization in the treatment of illness. But athletes have been using it for a long time too, visualizing themselves, whatever it is they're trying to learn. Come back to the center. There are actually studies, there's one in Canada where they were focused on a muscle in the hip that you don't often exercise in a gym. So they developed exercises specifically for that muscle. They had 3 groups. One, they just measured physical, like blood pressure, blood sugar, the strength of the hip. One group had a specific exercise that they did. The other second group had a visualization that they did. Third group didn't do anything. Come back in 6 weeks. Group that didn't do anything, no change. Group that did the actual physical exercise had changed, but still had the visualization group. And there are other studies too where they'll put a cast on someone's wrist and add visualization for maintaining the strength in your wrist. After the shoulders, come the back. And the first one is holding a ball, and there's a lot of holding the ball in this. Shoulders relaxed, elbows dropped on the upper arm lower than your shoulder. When it's up here, you don't want to do that. Martial reasons, it makes it easier to control you, but it also, health reasons, puts some stress on your shoulder. And this one comes from something called 8 Pieces of Brocade, which you may have heard of somewhere along the way. It's called Touching Heaven and Earth. Lower hand rotates out, presses up, upper hand presses down. And you feel some stretch in your back. You come back to the center. It's an exhale and an inhale. The 8 Pieces was developed by an army general to keep his troops healthy. He had a standing version and also a sitting version for folks who are injured or feeling ill. This one, actually, when the right hand goes up, it's for the liver, and when the left hand goes up, it's for the spleen. But in this, it's just for your back. Come back to the center. And we're going to rotate on the center axis. Center axis is that point that runs from the byway down through the perineum to the center of our foundation. And we're only going to move from the hips up like this. Because if I move the whole body, I'm not moving my muscles in my back. And it's going to put stress on the knees. So keeping your palms facing each other, you turn just as far as the hip on that side of the upper hand. Turn the hands around. Come back to the other side, to the hip on that side. You can synchronize your breathing. So you're inhaling in one direction and exhaling in the other. That causes you problems. Just breathe whatever feels best for you. One of the resources we mentioned are a couple classes at Massachusetts General Hospital, associated with Harvard and the Benson Henry Institute, and they tried doing a straight breathing exercise with medical students at Harvard. And what you would do is you would breathe on a count of 10. So you'd count each breath. And if you lost count, you'd have to start over. And what they found was those high-achieving Harvard students never got to 10, so you just count to 1. So again, in Taiji and Qigong, if you worry so much about the breathing, sometimes it takes away from paying attention to your physical being. So again, go at your own pace and works best for you. Next are the hips. You put your hands to one side, shift your weight over into the foot on that side. So now that line is going straight down into the foot on this side. That foot goes out, so I should feel some movement in the hip right there, back to the center. It's an exhale and an inhale, or breathing however feels best for you. If you're doing this one seated, you just leave your feet where they are and you move your knee out, so you feel that movement. Hands come back down for the forward and back motion in the hips. Again, if you're seated, your foot's just going to go up and down. But you're going to move your hands back just a little bit for counterbalance. Shift your weight into one side, either side, it doesn't matter. Foot goes forward, heel touches, whatever distance is comfortable for you. Come back to the center. If you need to rebalance, just put your toe down there. Arms go forward, foot goes straight back. Keep yourself centered to the floor. You don't want to go into a warrior 3 pose. If your balance is pretty good, you don't even have to touch your foot down. Kind of think of this as like a grandfather clock. And your body is the body of the clock. Arms are counterweights. And the leg is like the pendulum. We'll do the other side. And again, you can just synchronize your breathing. So you're inhaling in one direction, exhaling in the other. Back to the center, and then we're going to have our toes pointed towards the corner. A little bit of space between the heels. Again, you don't want to block blood flow, nerve flow, and Chinese qi flow, energy flow, or lymph flow. So you pretty much always have some space on your arms, space in the groin, so you don't want to bring anything in close like that. You always want to have your arms out just a little bit. Teachers I've had use visualizations of having tennis balls under your arm and your groin, or eggs that you want to crush. We're going to have fists, and fists in Taiji, you fold your fingers over, put your thumb on the outside. It can either be between index and middle finger, or just draped across the fingers. It is an internal martial art, meaning it's with energy flow. Hostile energy comes in, you join with that energy, take it off to the side using that energy. You don't meet force with force, because you get injured and so do they. But you also don't put your thumb in the middle, because if you hit something, you break your thumb. So thumb is on the outside. Fists are relaxed. If you open your hands and you have fingernail marks, you're squeezing too tightly. You don't want to do that. Shift your weight to one side, rotate that foot on the forefoot. It reaches out and you punch with the opposite side and come back, and that's the counterbalance. It's an exhale and an inhale. These are for the knees, but they also involve the arms. It's another one where you can, if you want, you can make it a kick, or again, you keep some bend in your knee. All of these are about balance, so it's working on your balance. Second one for your knees, shift your weight over, and we talked about that bow and arrow stance earlier, so just shift your weight, step up whatever distance is comfortable for you, shift your weight into it, to bow stance, and you punch with the opposite side. Remember that principle of song where all the joints just stretch outwards? Again, you don't force it, uwe. You let it do itself. Oftentimes tell folks, when you get to the point where the movements are just doing themselves and you're along for the ride, that's a good thing. It's an exhale and an inhale. I like this particular one with song because sometimes I give myself chiropractic adjustments. It's the old thing, if I would have taken better care of myself when I was younger, had I known I was going to still be around. So one thing I can say, changing the relationship with gravity and posture and balance and breathing really helps with pain management. So we'll come back to the center. Next couple are for your ankles. You shift your weight into one side. So I'm balanced over this foot. All my weight's in this foot. This is my foundation. This is a substantial foot. This is the empty foot. So I can just go heel and toe. And then we'll do heel and toe. Back to the center, and then for the lateral motion, the ankles, it's outside the foot, inside the foot, touch as close to the same spot as you can, so you focus on the ankle joint and not doing something like this where you're moving your whole leg. It's just your foot moving. And then you just kind of shake everything out. Class I was teaching spring semester, we had a guest Qigong teacher who, for the stress management thing, and I've seen other Qigong teachers teach this too, it's a really simple one where you just it's called shaking your Qi. It's also used in 8 pieces of brocade where you're just kind of bouncing and shaking everything around. What they try to do is really wake up your whole body. I want to do first Qigong sequence with an actual name. It's called 5 Treasures, and it was developed by the National Qigong Association. Really, it's kind of an introduction to Qigong. So I'm going to have my feet a little bit further apart. It's going to be the insides of the feet, outsides of the shoulders, and hands like I'm holding a ball. Palms are facing, and the first movement is called ocean wave breathing. And your hands are going to come out and get a little higher each time. And you're going to breathe with your whole body, so it's not just moving your hands. So we're nice and balanced, feet parallel. So just inhale, exhale, just follow me. And we reach the upper limit. We start to come back down. Hands get a little closer together each time. So we're back to where we started. From the ocean, go to the earth where we bring up Qi from the earth. Arms come up. We're going to be squatting, so don't lean over at your waist. Keep your head over your foundation so your hips go back. There's a bend in your knees as your hands drop down. 70% of whatever your range is, whatever is beyond your range, you just visualize it. It's an exhale and an inhale. Make the movement smooth and slow. I want to emphasize keeping your head and your center over your foundation to take the pressure off your lower back, because a lot of us, including me, have lower back issues. One of the forms of Taiji I learned specifically for lower back pain. When you lean yourself out, you put a lot of pressure on your lower back. Your head weighs roughly 10 pounds. For every few degrees out of alignment, you add an extra 10 pounds. So if your head is like 30 degrees forward, you added an extra 30 pounds on to the stress that your body's going to have to do to hold yourself upright. So just keeping your head on straight in every sense of the word, but keeping your head balanced really reduces pain in your neck, reduces headaches, your shoulders, your back. So we go from ocean to earth to the stars. There's a hook hand in Taiji where you just bring your fingers together like that. Going to put them at the base of the spine. Side. You're going to shift your weight back and forth like this, keeping your knees behind your toes and lined up with your toes, and sweep across the bottom and then back across. Each time it gets a little higher. Remember your breathing. Your hand's almost like a paintbrush, fingers trail. So again, you're activating that acupressure point in your wrist. And then we start back down. Again, keeping the shoulder nice and relaxed. Back to the center. You're wondering if I'm counting right, I'm doing probably about 7 of each of these. You can do whatever number you want. What you want to do is try to even each side out though. So to even the sides out, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. It's all about balance. You start coming back down. Again, you're using your whole body, breathing with your whole body. Back to the center. Qigong's been around 5,000 years. There are at least 8,000 different forms, and if you use a search engine to look for something like 8 pieces of brocade, you'll find that there are different versions of it. So again, find what works for you, and you come up with your own version, really. Because you hear different teachers give different explanations. Some for the number will say, okay, you always do an odd number in the morning and an even number in the evening. I don't know. So the next one, from the stars, we go to your heart. So you're going to rotate your hands so your fingers are forward. As you come back, you tilt your hips back. You keep your head over your foundation, and you turn your hands. You reach out and you grab and you pull in towards that middle dantian or heart chakra. It's an inhale and an exhale. The turning of your wrist is kind of a mild form of silk reeling. Silk reeling is turning on that central axis. In Chinese medicine, it's for massaging the internal organs. It gets its name because of the way the cocoon spins when you pull the silk. For the martial part, it's to give you better torque and more power. This one is a two-parter. The next one you reach out, it's almost like you're swimming. It's an exhale and an inhale. Back to the center. And then we want to bring down Tian Qi, our Qi energy from the heavens. We've already done this one before. Inhale up and exhale down, sometimes called sinking your Qi. Come back to the center. If you get a chance, Vincent Henry Institute, Massachusetts General Hospital has a series of 2 classes on mind-body medicine. First one is theoretically based, and it gives you all the research, like repairing telomeres to reduce aging, that sort of thing. The second one is has practical stuff. It has yoga sequences and Taiji sequences, very simple ones. The first one is, again, you get your posture, your balance, your breathing like we did before. And it's just called pouring. And it's a technique that's used for teaching a movement called wave hands like clouds. In Yang style, it looks like this, where you step. That silk reeling, you're turning your body. This is one you can also do in place. This is the Yang version, Sun family version. Difference is the hands. So they want you to be able to move from side to side like you're moving on rice paper without making a sound, like little cat feet. With this, you're just standing in place, arms are nice and relaxed, and you visualize water pouring from one side to the other. I've had folks that use light as their visualization, whatever works for you. You visualize warm, clean, salt water that's the same salinity as your body coming up into the leg, pouring up through your body, down the other side, same thing the other way. And if you want to do this as a really long visualization, you can visualize cleansing individual parts of your body, starting with your toes, up to your forefoot, take it to the top of your head. You can do it for however long you want. But again, you feel how this is a substantial foot, all the weight foot, insubstantial, no weight in that foot, back to the other. And they just call that pouring. And they move from that into something they call the Taiji swing, which is used in different Qigong sequences as well. And it's one of the favorites in classes I do. I will come into class and already doing this. Remember that central axis. You're going to turn on that from one side to the other. As all my weight goes into one foot, the heel of the empty foot comes off the floor just a little bit. Your arms swing freely. It's like your hands are tether balls attached directly to your spine and your shoulders disappear. You can do this with your eyes closed if you want, but if that makes you a little nauseated, you just keep your eyes open, look straight ahead at something that's not moving. It's that trick ice skaters use when they spin. You can use a visualization as you do this of picturing yourself somewhere where you feel very safe, secure, serene. And again, you can do this however long you want. And the wrist on the hand that's swinging behind me is hitting on an acupressure point kind of in the center of the buttock, which goes into the next part, which they call drumming, which is tapping on acupressure points. If you do things like EFT, you're already familiar with tapping, but upper hand comes up and it hits lung acupressure point just inside the shoulder. If you run your finger down your collarbone, there's a hollow right there. One of the things some of the Qigong teachers were teaching at the beginning of the pandemic was massaging there and tapping there to get your breathing meridian going. The next one is at the base of the rib cage. And then the inguinal crease just inside the hip. In the Taiji, they would refer to that as the qua. So in some movements, you're opening and closing your qua, opening and closing your hips. And then lower dantian, just tapping on that, or drumming on that. And when you're done, you just come back to the center. However, it doesn't have this next part in it. I like it just because, again, because of back issues. I hold a really large ball, use the lower hand to move the hip out a little bit. Upper hand keeps the head still. And just to loosen up the lower back a little bit works for me. And back to the center. The oldest, or one of the oldest, Qigong sequences is 5 animal frolics or 5 animal sport. There's a long sequence associated with each animal. There's this short sequence David Dorian Ross teaches that introduces you to it. Get yourself nice and centered. And the story is, and I don't know if it's true, an apocryphal story is that it was developed when, after floods, and water is an underlying metaphor in all Chinese philosophy. They see it as the most powerful thing. The metaphor in this is water. You flow like water, because if you know tidal wave, it can take out anything. When you want to make water powerless, you dam it up so it goes stagnant. After floods, they noticed that animals were still healthy because they were still moving around, and people not so much because they weren't moving around. Even the apocryphal story at the beginning of Taiji is a contest between a crane and a snake. So this, just get yourself nice and balanced. The first thing we're going to do is one called open the door, open the gates, Qi Shi. Rotate your arms so your palms are facing behind you, and just let your arms float up. Let the elbows lead the way, fingertips trail, hips go back a little bit, knees bend a little bit. It's an inhale up and exhale down. And the very first time I knew I was becoming more skillful, and again, don't worry about doing this stuff right or wrong. What you're working on is improving your skill. But just doing this, my fingers started to tingle, my hands started to tingle, my hands got warm. I see that as a way of knowing that you're getting your qi moving. So the first animal is a tiger. Curl your fingers in. Arch a little bit, reach up, grab like the tiger getting his breakfast. It's an inhale and an exhale. Balance everything out. Hands come down. You start to shift your weight from side to side like you're pouring, and let your hands, kind of your fingertips trail. And this is the deer, and there are times when I've done this outside. I've had deer show up. But you bring your middle finger and your ring finger in, other fingers are up, so you have deer antlers. You step up on your heel. As you do, you rotate on that heel, and you get that nice twist, again, to massage the internal organs. 7% of your range of motion, stay in your comfort zone. Round. The length of your step is whatever you're comfortable with. The shorter the step, the easier it is. The longer the step, the more difficult it is. I do short steps. And remember to keep your knees and toes lined up, and your knee behind your toe in that front foot. And back. Balance everything out. The monkey is the next. The monkey is stealing peaches. I learned peaches originated in China. I was learning this form. You're going to make fists. They're going to come up here to about level with your shoulders. Come up on your toes. Shoulders come up. You look to the one side, you look to the other side, and you press down. It's an inhale and an exhale. You can do it slow or fast. Sometimes when I do it fast, it tends to shoot me off my feet and I lose my balance a little bit, so I'm doing it slow. Balance everything out. The bear is the next one. The bear is the easiest one of these. You just make fists with your thumbs towards your abdomen. Again, you move your whole body. It's massaging your abdomen. And then back to the center and do the other way. Balance it out. Balance everything out. Fifth animal is a crane, and crane is involved with balance. Remember, we mentioned the crane earlier, waiting for the fish to come by. Oftentimes the crane will be on one foot, so shift your weight into one side. Crane's getting ready to fly. Balance everything out. We'll just balance it out 3 times. Back to the center. I want to do one more form called 5 elements. And there are 3 versions of this I do. We're just going to do one of them. I will show you one element, the metal element, from a different version, where your arms come up and out and in, because this is metal that's associated with the lung. And one of the teachers, there's a lot of teaching online now, use this again for activating the lung meridian to help with respiratory issues. So I tend to do that one every morning also. If you're trying to increase the, again, it doesn't matter if you believe it or not, but the energy you do clockwise and tap. And if you're trying to decrease the energy, you go counterclockwise. I know in yoga, when I was at a convention a few years ago, the teacher talked about how in chakras there's a male-female side. In Taoist philosophy, in medicine, there's a similar thing. When we're standing like this, for men they would have left hand, right hand. For women they would have right hand, left hand, similar kind of thing. So another standing meditation is just like this, and breathe. Standing is actually fairly taxing after a while, especially if you have a wide stance. I was at a gym teaching, and we just tried to see who could hold it the longest, which I wouldn't recommend doing this. There's no competition in Taijiquan and Qigong. You're just trying to help each other out. But folks that day wanted to do it, and some folks didn't last very long. We were standing like this, which we're going to do in a minute. So this version of 5 elements is one that's taught by, again, Paul Lamb. Going to use the insides of the feet, outsides of the shoulders, hands about belt high, fingertips facing, just like I'm holding a ball in front of me. Remember, there's space under the arms. And we want to do the breath work. You can even do the body scan if you want to. This is the earth element. So inhale and exhale, making the exhale last longer. Just breathe at your own pace. All of the elements have a relationship with another element. They can either bring it into being or they can take it out, like water can take out fire. In Chinese theory and philosophy, just as everything is going from yin to yang, the elements are changing too. Earth gives rise to metal, which is the next one and this one. So your hands come up, again like you're holding a ball. And it's a visualization I first learned in sports psychology. You visualize a big energy ball in there that's trying to expand. You're trying to keep it from expanding. It's pushing your hands out, and you're able to press it back in. It's an inhale and an exhale. Again, there's some movement in the wrists. You're breathing with your whole body. This is one I often used, particularly if folks had issues with anxiety. You can do it standing or sitting, and one person basically sort of hypnotized herself doing this. And it's used a lot in Sun style Taiji, one of the 5 families of Taiji. Sun Lutong was a Qigong master as well as a Xingyi Bagua master before he learned Taiji, so he put all those together. Bring your hands back to the earth, but he used open and close as a way to move from one movement to another. Metal gives rise to water. Water flows down, so you want your hips again to go back so you can keep your head over your foundation. 70% of your range of motion. You lower yourself down as you exhale. Inhale back up. Water gives rise to the element wood. You rotate your hands so your fingers are facing to the front. You make a big circle up, about chin high as you exhale. Inhale as your hands come back down. Back to center. Fire is the last element. Wood gives rise to fire. They make metaphorical sense when you think about it. I'm going to rotate on my center axis till my left hand lines up with my left hip, so don't mirror me, go in the other direction. Right hand comes up over top, and it's going to be like an open and close on its sides, on its side, or a bellow, so it's an inhale and an exhale. Rotate to the other side. As you do, you turn your hands, keeping your palms facing till you get to the hip on the other side, and begin. Back to the center. We mentioned tapping. Massage is also a big part of Chinese medicine and Qigong. So your hands come up, massage down the back. If you want to take a little extra time on the kidneys, you can. Down to the front and up. Again, keeping your head over your foundation. This actually really can become a way of life because they say qi is coming from many sources. The food you eat. If you ever are a distance runner or athlete doing endurance sports, you use something called gu. Gu is the name for qi you get from food. You also get it from the air you breathe. Your parents, which they say is stored in your kidney meridian. Just the way you live your life. Arms come in the front like you're hugging a big old tree. This is standing stake or standing pole. It's another standing meditation. Shoulders nice and relaxed. And just breathe, knees nice and soft. And again, you can hold this however long you want. You can do it by numbers of breaths. You can put a clock on it. Whatever works for you. Or just do it till you've done 70% of whatever you're capable of at that moment. Hopefully at some point during this you felt a little tingling in your hands or a little bit of warmth in your hands. My teacher used to have us face each other and line up Lao Gong points, and you could actually feel the other person's energy. At the end of all this, you balance everything out. Inhale up and exhale down. It took me a long time to be able to do that, to feel the other person's energy. And then there was one person where we were like 10 feet away, and when we were hands back and forth, we could feel the undulation in the palms. Bring your in. Left hand is flat with the thumb over, right hand's a fist. They come together. It's a symbol of respect. So thank you for joining me. Stay safe, healthy, and well. And I hope someday you're able to get back here to Williamsburg and we can actually meet in person. My email address, I think, is on the handout you get. If you have any questions, let me know. I was drawn to Taijiquan and Qigong initially because of the philosophy, and I've been practicing yoga for a long time, but I really like the movement in this. And this is the one thing I've done, and I've run, bike, swim, lift, yoga, various things. It's the one thing so far, I should knock on something, haven't had an injury so far. So again, you stay within your comfort zone and adapt it to yourself, because every day, every moment is different. And part of this is just being aware. Okay, thank you very much, and take care.